But this individual is continuing his attack to the second location and then actually fled. So what that shows is that he is aware of what he's doing, and he now has a will to live.
They're going to have drones. They're going to have helicopters. Every TAC team in that state has been mobilized. All hands on deck. Canines, bloodhounds, everything are going in to look for this person.
Well, it's been a long night, that's for sure. And my heart goes out to everybody that's been affected by this. It's a tragedy, and it's affected a lot of people.
A manhunt underway in Maine right now after a gunman opened fire in a bowling alley and a restaurant. Police have named a person of interest. This man you see on your screen, his name is Robert Card. They're warning people to stay away from him because he could be armed and dangerous. Former acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker joins me now. Matt, great to have you on the program. A.G. Garland, the current person in the Attorney General's role, said he will closely monitor the situation. You had this job. What does that mean when it comes to the federal response to a horrific tragedy like this?
Yeah, well, it's good to be with you, Todd. But first of all, you want to make sure that the state and local law enforcement have all the resources that they need. And oftentimes, that is giving them ATF and FBI agents to assist in this manhunt now, and then also, to do the investigation. When I was at the Department of Justice, we had several of these mass shootings. Each one is an absolute tragedy. Had a chance, to meet with families in several cases. And it is just, obviously there are so many families that are hurting today and suffering and have lost loved ones, or their loved ones are severely injured. And, this is obviously what law enforcement is trained for. And one of the many things I admire about law enforcement is not only will they do their job both in the investigation and in the manhunt, but then they will also share that learning, whatever they learn from this event, to their colleagues across the country. And so they will improve constantly in these types of situations. But this is just an absolute tragedy. And, obviously my heart breaks for everyone that's been affected by this.
Matt, let's focus on the law here for a moment. I'm getting a lot of texts this morning from some of the biggest 2A supporters that you will ever see. And they are saying, why did this guy have a gun in the first place? Maine has a yellow flag law on the books. Explain what a yellow flag law is, how it differs from a red flag law, and why this guy had a gun in the first place, in light of the fact that he had such mental health issues that were documented, including a 2-week stay at a mental health facility just this summer.
Yeah, and obviously there are federal laws that prevent people with mental illness that have been declared incompetent or otherwise adjudicated from possessing guns. And then, you have these state laws that have been passed in an attempt to have people, report individuals that may be dangerous to, society or themselves, in order to, prevent them from possessing guns. But, in this case, obviously none of those laws work, because this gentleman, by the pictures that we're seeing right now, possessed a gun and used it lethally against his fellow citizens. And so, this is where, to some extent, you can pass all the laws in the world, but ultimately it is up to families and neighbors and others, to make sure law enforcement is aware of the designs of some of these, completely mentally, just crazy people, to be honest with you, that are willing to hurt their fellow citizens. And so this is where, the laws on the books have failed. It doesn't mean that we need more laws. It means we need to enforce the laws on the book. I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now, is that we have plenty of laws to prevent these situations, but oftentimes their enforcement is difficult.
Understood. The alleged shooter reportedly threatened to shoot up the National Guard base where he was stationed. Assuming that report is true, wouldn't it seem that that would at least get you on law enforcement radar, or at the very least behind bars? I mean, we're talking the feds here, Matt, something which you're intimately familiar with.
Yeah, and that's certainly what would be considered a credible threat if, somebody has been saying that and that's been reported. It'll be very interesting. We're going to have plenty of time, Todd, to do the after action and who knew what when and what was done and how much this gentleman was being tracked. But, obviously there are more threats than there are active situations like this. And I think law enforcement's biggest challenge is trying to figure out what's the most credible. And, and obviously we also appreciate our individual liberties and our freedoms. And so, there's a balance that occurs in our society every day where we don't want law enforcement too involved, but obviously we'd love to prevent every situation before it happens like this one. I'm not going to sit here and suggest that law enforcement failed, because we just don't know. And, these folks are working hard in a very difficult situation. There's been a lot of rhetoric against law enforcement in the last several years. People that wanted to defund them and otherwise, take away their resources. And so, Todd, I think in the context that we live in modern day America, we will have time to see kind of what was known about this gentleman. But at the same time, law enforcement should be praised and encouraged, because those guys are all right now putting their lives on the line to try to make sure that this individual is brought to justice.
Yeah, you betcha. And they have their work cut out for them, because this guy is reportedly armed and dangerous, and he knows the terrain, and he's been trained in this. So that is frightening for law enforcement. Matt Whitaker, appreciate your insight. Thank you, sir.